Well, good evening and welcome to week three of season two of the WTRL Zwift Racing League. We're here tonight to cover the APAC crew. I'm Kate Bates, joined by the wonderful Anna Russell. Anna, have you got the whiteboard ready? Tonight is going to be a cracker.
I think this is the favorite course for me for this league. It's just brutal, but then there's flat parts, there's different team tactics at play, there's a huge amount of bike choice that we can deep dive into as well while they're out racing. There's strategy around points, what do you go for? It's this one's amazing. I can't wait.
Well, before we went on air, I said to you that I thought it was quite unfair to make them race over this course. Kind of goes to show the sprinter in me. But you were pretty psyched for it. So let's take a look at the course profile because it is a bit unlike anything we have seen in the community leagues before. And it packs a real punch, certainly in the back half.
Yeah, so they take 3 laps of the Innsbruck ring course. So you can just see that going around there, those 3 laps. That leg snapper is brutal. Mostly flat this course, but the leg snapper is going to really make some selections. And then they go downhill to hit their sprint for both their fastest segment time or their first across the line, whatever the team decides. And then you see they finish off with this huge climb, 7.43 kilometers, 5.4%. I've ridden this myself a couple of times now. It is not easy. It's basically an FTP test at the end of 3 laps of the Innsbruck ring course.
Yeah, I love how you say huge because, I think this is pretty intimidating. It is a very big climb. And once again, just like Richmond was, this was a course that was ridden for the World Championships some years ago. So we have seen the best of the best race around here. And I can tell you, not a lot of people came to the finishing groups. And it was pretty spread out. We are expecting to see that again tonight. I mean, essentially for the top races, that 7.4 kilometres at the end will take them roughly 25, maybe 30 minutes. And for some of the other grades, I think probably up to 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to make my competition nervous, I did it on a bit of a training ride and it took 21 minutes 45. So we'll see how people hit it today. But it really is going to be what I'm interested in is how people are going to give themselves away with their bike selection. Because if you're going for those sprint points, you might see some disc wheels, some aero setups, the Trons. But if people are going for climbing, then you're going to see some different bikes out there and that may give away the game. So it's really a lot of dynamics out at play and team selection is super important as well.
And we do need to remember that tonight is actually a points race. It's not on time overall aggregated. So there will definitely be, Anna, you're spot on, some people that are going for those earlier sprints and have a slightly different tactic than maybe some of the climbers who are just hanging in for those first three. Now we'll go down to the racing. They're heading out on course, the women out on course, and we will also talk through what's happened so far. Now, in the A grade women, Anna, we do have a bit of a smaller field this season. We've got Zed Sun are on the top of the table here, but they are tied with Aero and the BRT Hellfire Kittens sitting in third. Now, the reason that it's a bit of a slimmer field is because these ladies spoke and said that it was very important for them to not have any combined divisions. And the wonderful folks, shout out to Martin over at WTRL, he has made that happen. And that's why there's not quite as many, but it does give the opportunity for everybody, the A's, the B's, the C's and the D's, to race in their own category, which, Anna, I think on a course like this makes it a little bit tougher, but it is very important from an opportunity point of view for the women.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a smallish field, but this is a head-to-head battle. There is a full suite of Aero riders and a full suite of Z Sun riders. These guys are going head-to-head each week, and we've seen Danette Shaw doing pretty well for the Z Sun riders, but Aero, I think, is sick of getting beaten on the line, and looks like they've come out to party.
And that's a really good point. It's essentially like they started this week with that final selection. So it is a pretty high-quality field. And I think a bit of internal politics goes on as well. But the kind of climb that we're going to see at the finish, it's a little bit everybody's just in survival mode. I don't know. From my view, Anna, I wouldn't say that there's too many tactics in that final climb other than get up there in any way that you can.
Yeah, I do just want to. We are just following Grace Smith here. I just want to give her a shout out. She's actually dislocated her finger in a snowball fight in Ireland, but out here riding. So shout out definitely to Grace. That's awesome. That's a great story for how you've dislocated your finger. But nice work there for representing your team. So to your question, Kate,
I
I
hope
think.
that isn't the power up pressing finger. By the way, that might come in
Gosh,
as a bit of a
that'd be
detriment.
terrible.
But otherwise, thankfully, it won't be too bad on the indoor bike.
I think with the climb, the interesting part about it is it's 3 stages. It sort of kicks up, then it flattens off about a third of the way up. By flattened off, it goes to sort of a 3%. Then it kicks up again, then it flattens off again, then it kicks up, and then the last 800 meters is relatively flat. And we saw in the men's Prem race earlier today that they actually almost had sort of a slow, drawn out sprint finish between about 5 of them. The female race, they definitely had a sort of solo breakaway with Catherine Curie. So there's different strategies you can play on that climb. It's not like a Alp de Zwift or even an epic climb where it sort of is just that grind getting up. This one has some areas you can attack, you can recover. If I was these riders, I'd be looking at breaking away in that first third and then recovering on that first flat portion and then pushing up again.
Well, so they start with 3 laps of the Innsbruck ring, which they call up the legs snapper. It's about 430 metres climb, but around that 7% mark for that. Do you think that we'll see much action up there?
I don't know about this group. I think when we go to some of the categories that have got more riders, we'll definitely see action. That's where people are going to split the field, especially with the sprint straight after the downhill. With this sort of just 2 teams up against each other, I'm not sure how they're going to play it. Obviously, they want to go for those first across the line points. So looks like Aero means business. They're crossing this bridge, which means they're almost at the leg snapper. They're going to start it pretty much once they get to the other side of the river. And I think Aero is here to take this out because they've all moved to the front. Zed Sun is really just cruising in behind them, conserving energy. Maybe Zed Sun is going for the finish line points today, and Aero is really going after these intermediaries.
I think no matter what your tactic is, it's definitely a pretty intimidating course. Like I can definitely imagine that there's some riders that are going to want to be as efficient as they possibly can through this section. But that said, I think it's more efficient to just follow wheels than to let things go and not chase. So if those Aero girls are pushing the pace, and Meredith Clark up there now, Jenny Pettinen, she's a very solid rider, both in the esports world and IRL. They're not the kind of riders that you want to let even a small gap open, and we are seeing a few little gaps opening here. They need to be pretty careful with that because I think that will really wear on the legs to have to chase back.
Yeah, and we can just see it was one of the Z Sun riders and Reed, Carberry, Bemrose, Danette even dropping off a little bit there, which is surprising. You can catch up again with this small group. You can sort of jump in that super tuck, get through. There is a little rise halfway down this downhill that if you just push over that and get momentum, you will get back on the end. And that looks as though that's what Garland's done just on the back of this group. Haven't seen Garland out racing, I don't think, recently, so good to see her out. But Danette Shaw, concerning that she has dropped off the back like she has there, because she will definitely be the one that they want climbing up to the top. But if you look at this, Kate, see that rider there from Zed Sun with the Aero helmet, and it looks like some deeper dish wheels. That is definitely someone who is there for the sprint points. They're not there for climbing. That is not a climbing setup at all.
And I think that was Danette Shaw that we saw there with that setup. So that, like you said at the top of the show, it really shows what their tactics are without knowing anything more, knowing what bike they've chosen, and an Aero helmet as well. I mean, they do have the luxury that they don't have to worry about how hot an Aero helmet would be on the climb. Can you imagine doing that in real life? That would be absolutely torturous. But they don't quite have to worry about that. So it's purely about aerodynamics. But in which case, why wouldn't you, Anna, in every race wear an Aero helmet if we know it's more aero?
We're just watching the sprint here actually with Clark going through from Aero with the Aero power up. There's not really a huge attack, maybe a little bit there coming from Daru from Z-Sun behind, but Clark is just going to roll through this one, I think. A little bit of a chase behind, and no, she has taken that out. So Aero takes the first sprint, Z-Sun second, another Aero rider in third. Your question around the Aero helmet, I mean, style, I guess. You're only getting a 1 to 2% advantage, but it's just kind of boring. Like, you can just wear a cool hat or a headband or a visor, or just rock a cool sort of hairstyle. So I actually just think it's style. People just don't want to be too boring.
Well, the fashion police have arrived, ladies and gentlemen, and Anna Russell is leading the charge. I know that you're a headband. Is that what we call it? The sweatband thing that you wear on Zwift. Is that called a headband?
I'd call it a headband. Yeah, like a Jane Fonda kind of 80s dance-inspired headband.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I was thinking Boris Becker, but you're right. Jane Fonda is the perfect person. Yeah, that is definitely a more practical way. Now, let's flick across and take a look at the bees because they are also out on course and not too far off that intermediate sprint as well. They are just going up the steep bit, and this is actually the C's that we're looking at here. Look at, a lot of gaps have opened up here pretty quickly on that leg snapper. It's kind of being very true to name early on, isn't it? So this is the front we're seeing here.
We ate the cake. They've all 6 or at least 5 riders have come over the leg snapper in the front of that group. So these guys are doing extremely well at the start of this race. Great job, We Ate the Cake. Looks like they've been chased here by CMA, the Comets, and some Spin Mafia and the Cruzettes. But these guys are look like they might be forming a bit of a team time trial formation here and going for those first across the lines. They'll absolutely clean that up.
So let's just unpack the first across the line versus the segment time for a second. First across the line is fairly self-explanatory, but segment time, talk us through that.
Oh, this is where people need to learn how to play the game a bit better with the Zwift Racing League and this new format for this season, fastest through segment points. So these points are actually quite high. So it's scored per race, not per lap. So say one of these riders decided, I'm going to just ride zone 2 easy for this whole race, but every time we hit the sprint, I'm going to absolutely go for it. Say they got the fastest segment time in lap 1, and then they got the fastest segment time in lap 2, they will get ranked at the end. So they could actually, 3 times round, get 3 lots of different points. They could get 20 points for being the first, then 15 points again if they then held the second fastest time, and then 10 points after that if they held the third fastest time. So they could really rack up a huge amount of points there. So, I think people really need to start targeting those fastest through segments, especially on courses like this where you're doing a segment multiple times.
Well, we just saw, I think, Mazza love the acceleration, but that has cost her. And look at this gap that's opened up. I mean, I think that's probably a perfect example for Lovegrove where you have to temper your effort. You only need to win an intermediate sprint literally by a millimetre or maybe for a bit of safety in game by half a wheel. But putting in too much effort, that group will roll back and roll over the top of you, albeit all the teammates there from We Ate the Cake. We saw the standings come up. We might take another look at them in a minute if we can. And We Ate the Cake. Oh, look at that. They are on the top of the table, but a pretty tight race because Spin Mafia and Comets are both on 37 points, only 3 adrift with the Cruzettes. Now, interesting because they're all Aussie Hump Day Rider teams there, but honestly, Anna, I don't think that they're working together. I think it would be pretty competitive for them. CMA Queen Bees, they are sitting in 5th. Rave, C, and Herd of Bilbies are the next 2. Not really big gaps at this stage. We're only in week 3, but I do think it's fair to say that We Ate the Cake have shown their intention from week 1.
Yeah, and you can see, even though they are AHDR teams here, some of them, the Comets and the Cruzettes, are in different kits. So they're not wearing that kit that we know so well, that sort of purple Armada sort of kit. They are wearing some orange, and then there's also the Comets, I think, are wearing a sort of more striped kit. So maybe that's setting their intention, we may be AHDR, but like you said here, I'm seeing quite a few Tron bikes, which I think is the teams who are sort of going for the safe bet. So the Tron is kind of good on the Innsbruck ring course and good on the climb, but it's not the best. So the best on the Innsbruck ring course, you'd be looking at that faster, kind of more slippery setup, and on the climb, you'd be looking at the specialized, I think it's a Tarmac Pro, maybe with some NV 7.8 wheels, just so you don't get dropped on these flatter portions. But it looks like people are going the sort of safer option of that Tron bike in this racing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bike selection, from a lot of the conversations I've had with people who are kind of discovering Zwift, there is a lot going on to figure out your bikes. Of course, you need to level up to a position where you do have the option to choose kind of whatever bike you would like to. Tron, remember, you need to have ridden that 50,000 vertical meters in order to have that, which is not a small achievement. Now, they've just gone through the start finish line there. We're going to flick over and take a look at the bees here. They also down to a fairly small pack pretty quickly. It's pretty brutal. I mean, from the very get-go, you've got to find a wheel and really hang on to it. The caffeine's well represented here. TBR Smile On is the other squad that has sent a full crew out there. So the squad, CMA squad goals and the Devil Kittens haven't been out on course yet, but the Caffeines and Smile On have certainly been roughing it out between them. Lam Kong, she's been pretty impressive the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure how much she'll love the climb today, but let's see what she does in these first couple of laps.
Yeah, I mean, this course, just talking about it again, Innsbruck Ring itself is a hard course with that leg snapper, but then having to basically finish off the racing today with what I would call an FTP test is really horrific. But if you have played it right with your team and you can just hide behind your better sprinters and they just don't worry about the climb, it actually won't be too bad because you can just draft basically the whole time. But in saying that, we've got a new rider on the team I race for racing tomorrow, and she's been told by her coach that unless her heart rate maxes out at 190, she's not doing it right. So maybe that shows just how brutal this leg snapper is. That heart rate will just go through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, that is pretty brutal. We do look at all of those metrics when we're trying to figure out how people are going. And if you're commentating on in real life people, you can kind of watch their body language and their face if the camera gets the angle. But you don't often know all of their data like we're seeing here. And it's the heart rate and the powers can really give a lot away. So even 11 kilometers in, to see a heart rate at around 160, that's already fairly, into the anaerobic zone, I would say, and already starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So bearing that in mind, this first 30K is going to feel quite long.
Yeah, and you'd think here they've got sort of a group of definitely just a selection of the big ring. We have Margarita there from the big ring, and also the caffeines. They could probably just ease off a little bit, to be honest, and just save their legs for the climb because they are riding, like you said, their heart rates are relatively high. They could cruise it down a little bit. The group behind is 40 seconds back there, so not really that close at all. So I'm surprised that people are still pushing pretty hard off the front. If it was me, I'd really just try to ease back the pace and hide on the back, like we see Margarita doing. She's a prolific Zwifter, so she knows what she's doing. She's sitting at the back there on just sort of 2.3 watts a kg, and hopefully we can recover. But we'll see on that climb just people who have maybe not ridden this flat part as well as they could have with the draft factor.
So based on the speed they're going at the moment, the ETA for their race overall is just over an hour. So look, that's not too bad. I think when you look at the overall profile of a course, it's not just whether there's hills or flats, it's how long it will take you out on course. So they're cracking along pretty well at the moment, looking to do that in under an hour. But it does raise a really interesting question about why are they pushing the pace at this stage when there's a fairly big gap back to the next couple. What for? I think if they're launching attacks and really hurting people's legs, that's kind of a different story. But I do wonder what they're thinking. Are they just thinking that maybe a slow grind will wear each other out, or are they just kind of ramping it up bit by bit, and we might just see that pace pick up? I mean, they are going 46 kilometres an hour, and it is 0%, so it's
Yeah.
not downhill. So that's pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they've got date night or something later. They're on a time limit. They've got to get
Yeah.
off the bike, showered, and get out the door. So, people can't just hang around on the streets of Innsbruck for all night, I guess. So they just want to get this cracking
Yeah, I
and
mean,
get it over and done
maybe they've got Bridgerton lined up on Netflix, and they're all keen to get on that. Who knows? Either way, they're going to have a good amount of adrenaline pumping through their veins after this. So probably good to sit down and watch a series. I mean, normally, Anna, we talk about like fashion reviews and fashion police. Maybe next time we can turn to Netflix reviews. We're back with the A women now. So again, they're going through this section, the leg snapper section of the course. I noticed that this lap, Jenny Pettinan, she is a very good climber in real life as well as in game. I don't think she attacked there. I think she just rode up there at a fairly comfortable speed for her. But the rest of them have stayed a lot closer than they did last lap. It's almost like they kind of got the jitters in the first lap and a few gaps opened up, and then they've settled into the pace a little bit more. But look how fast they go. They go over 60k an hour going down this. Good use of the aero tuck. May as well give those legs a bit of a rest, because that's the other thing. Once they do head on to the climb, there isn't a single second of dead time for your legs. So they do kind of need to bear that in mind through this section.
Exactly, and Bemra is here. She needs to really watch out because she's dropping off the back, and she needs to power of this little uphill, get back in touch, because when these guys hit the sprint, they'll surprisingly move very quickly away. As we see a few, looks like the Specialized Tarmac Pros there that we just saw as we went through. So I think some of those aero riders, maybe the pattern that you'd mentioned is definitely pegged for that climb. And as these guys are coming through the finish, looks like they're coming through to the sprint, sorry. Looks like there's 4 aero and 3 Z-Sun riders. And Danette has made her way back into that group. And Grace, who's got the dislocated finger. So that's not holding her back whatsoever.
No, it's a comfortable group out there. I think Danette Shaw, we've seen this a couple of times actually, where in the first couple of kilometres we've thought, oh, is she not on her game today? I actually think she gets better and better as it goes, and today being a little bit longer in race time, so around the 55-minute mark these ladies are looking at, I think it suits her. I love that through this series we've been able to see their strengths. We're looking at the intermediate sprint that we saw on that last lap as well. And this time Smith is the one accelerating away. It looks to me like she won't just take that first over the line, but probably the segment for Grace Smith as well there, because that was pretty snappy. Good use of a power up too. Interesting though that she's dropping the feather now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, not great, but then if she's the designated sprinter, she'll get another one when she crosses the end of this lap, and hopefully will pick up another aero. So maybe she just doesn't need the feather because they're not really focusing on her for the climb. I mean, there are a lot of power-ups in this course too. You get one under that sprint banner. You get one when they go through the finish of each lap. But then that's it. There's none that you get on the climb. So once they've passed through the start-finish banner and then head towards the climb, they'll need to save whatever they've got. But some of these climbers, I think, probably have just held on to the power-up if they get a feather during this race, and maybe just won't drop any more at all, and just hold on for dear life for that one anytime they get in trouble in the upcoming climb.
Well, I saw Grace Smith get out of her seat there and have to accelerate a little bit back on. That is a bit of a danger when you go through those intermediate sprints. You put out a lot of energy, and then if the group just kind of rolls straight past you, often it's a bit of an effort to chase. But it looks to me like these 7 riders have really established a very good pace even amongst them. They're rolling pretty well in the group. Nobody's taking too much responsibility. It's also fairly even. I think we've got 4 aero and 3 Z-Sun. And so neither has too much of a numerical advantage there either. This is a pretty balanced group. And I do think that there'll be a bit of posturing in this next lap before they do head out up to that climb.
Yeah, this is kind of a lap you'd be a little bit nervous. We've already seen, Bemrose there, Jay Reid as well, the other Z Sun rider. They dropped so quickly on that leg snapper and they just couldn't get back on. And if you're a climber and then you get dropped, that's sort of a really disappointing way for the race to pan out because you're relying on that big climb coming up. And although you could catch them, you also could not. So I think this lap will be a bit nerve-wracking for some of these riders to just make sure they stay in touch and don't make any silly decisions on that leg snapper.
And I think that's a really interesting point you raised because when you think of a climber, you think, well, why would they get distance on the leg snapper? But you have to consider the different profiles of the course and the climb. So the leg snapper is only 430 meters, but by goodness, it's steep. This climb we've got at the end, 7.4 kilometers. I know for myself, the thought of climbing, essentially doing an FTP test at the end of a race makes me feel rather nauseous, but a 430 metre climb isn't too bad at all. We've got the B grade here. They've just gone through that intermediate sprint, and they're also a little bit strung out. We have seen this happen across the grades where somebody accelerates, and it is Margarita Williams there who's at the front. You did mention she's a very experienced Zwift rider, so she's one that I feel quite confident knows how to taper her efforts quite well.
Yeah, unfortunately for her, though, both her teammates just lost touch on that snapper. There was Kern Stokes, who you can just see there, been well and truly gapped now, 7 seconds back, unfortunate. And then also just behind them, Wheels. Wonder Wheels. So these 3 TBR riders are together. This one is going for a fastest time segment, I believe, because that's a massive sprint against your teammates. But that is maybe their strategy. Maybe they're just riding along together for a leisurely Sunday ride with a few high-intensity sprints thrown into the mix.
And they do burn a little bit of energy when they go through those intermediate sprints. But again, if that's your strategy, then that is going to work fairly well for you. We can actually see the segment leaderboard on the left there. So it's about a 20-second effort, and Zed Sun are dominating that in terms of segment time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's first over the line, and that's the A category riders that we're looking at there because they are a smidge faster than the B cat, which is exactly why we have those different grades. Now, this is not a nice position to be in, whether you're at the front or whether you're chasing, because being on your own with so much left to go is going to be pretty difficult. But I have a feeling that everything will regroup a little bit here. If we look at the top right of screen, those dots, we get a bit of an idea of where everybody is out on course. So that's a great view when you can't look on screen and you're wondering how far they are away.
Yeah. When there's tumbleweed rolling across the road and you're wondering where everyone is and you're feeling a bit lonely. But this group is definitely split up. It's just looks like 3 out the front now, 2 from Caffeines and then Waterhouse from the Big Ring. But Braderick here from AHDR, she's desperately trying to bridge up. You can just see, she can see those riders just ahead of her. She's got a TBR rider jumping on her wheel. That's Margarita. And the other 3 behind. So there's been a bit of a split here. I'm not sure. Maybe after that sprint, they just took it a little too easy and someone attacked over the top. That is a good strategy to try out if people are racing over the next few days. Is there'll be teams going for those sprints, and straight after they'll basically drop their watts to like 1 or 2 watts a kg. If you do a counter and sprint over the top of them, you could form a little breakaway.
Yeah, no doubt. You've hit the nail on the head, Anna. That is the best time to attack, is over the top of a sprint, because it's an anaerobic effort. Their heart rates are high, their powers are high. They do need to recover from it. And, also, if you are sprinting, you do really need to keep your eye open for the people who are doing that. Tess Waterhouse has joined up here now. So they are with 3. We've got Melinda, AHDRL, Lam Kong from the Caffeines. We spoke about her earlier, and Tess Waterhouse. So this is actually a pretty formidable little group up here. They have upped their pace in order to open that gap, about 8 seconds back. What do we say? 15 seconds is the magic number of when something will survive. But generally we're not talking about 3 riders chasing 3 riders. That's generally a smaller group, one or one rider over to a big chasing bunch. Let's jump over and take a look at the men who are just heading out on course. They've got some bigger bunch numbers, which changes the dynamic of how the racing is going. Not necessarily for better or for worse, but certainly means that they need to consider every single move they make. And we're watching Chubb, who has just rolled. He was just sitting on the front there, but they're blobbing along fairly well here. Anna, their speed is very high. Look at that, 55k an hour, and they're only 1% slightly down. So they are actually moving pretty quickly, but no one rider or one team is really taking the responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, they're within the first kilometre of this race, so they've obviously just started off super hot. I just noticed Sam Lindsay just hiding in the middle of the pack there, not on a Tron bike, which makes me think he has been earmarked for something in this race, whether that's the sprint or the climb, not sure. But that's kind of the theory I'm going with, that if you see some specific bikes out there, there's a specific strategy that team's running with. And I know that the team he's on will be up against this Beast Mode team, because they have come to play and they are doing extremely well, with also World Elite Zwifters, and I've seen, I think, some ZWC riders in the mix as well. So very, very competitive men's field. DPAC as well, the elite team there, they'll be I think taking control over the leg snapper. You can just see some of the league standings popping up on the bottom left of the screen. That's for the C division. You'll see some of the A division there with, so DPAC Elite, they're leading with 40. Beast Mode, right on their heels at 38, and then the Evo Savages at 36. We're going to see some fireworks on that leg snapper, I'll tell you right now.
I personally just love that donuts are being offered for the end of the race over there. That's quite kind of them. Send some into the commentary box, would you? That would be great. Pink icing for me, and a few sprinkles will do just nicely. DPAC is definitely the ones with the target on their back. Beast Mode, it's their first season out here. So we were quite excited when we saw them on week 1, because they came in with a mighty bang, and a lot of the names were quite new to us, but they do have pedigree. And they, of course, have the team director of who won the UCI World Championships on Zwift. So they've got a fair bit of esports experience, and I think that they will only get more interesting. It's kind of a bit misleading, I think, to see DPAC 40, Beast Mode 38. They have beat them twice so far, but it has been extremely tight. In the team's time trial last week, it was less than a second. So it really is very much game on, and they will have to have thought about their strategy pretty long and hard here. Sam Lindsay, I know you're a big fan of his, the Kiwi. You're right about bike selection. Isn't it interesting? I mean, we are very early on in the race, but we'll have to see what he does. But he's impressed me the most on New York. It seems to be the course where he really shines. And that's up those pretty nasty climbs. And also, I'll say that in season 1, Anna, New York was kind of the hardest in terms of climbs, and that's where we saw him shine. So I would love to see him really, launch some pretty hard moves on that final climb today.
Yeah, someone I'm looking at actually is Federico Pedronzini from DPAC Elite. He's a fairly light male rider at 76 kg, but has a very high 20-minute power, actually the highest in the field, of 409 watts. So keep an eye out for Federico, as I think that will definitely be a climber that they've targeted for this, but followed pretty closely by Christopher Hatz from Beast Mode. He's only 80 kg and has a 20-minute power of 400 watts. So there are some climbers out there. There we are. C Hatz, Beast Mode. So he's got that little orange cap on, the flowing blonde locks, and he might be the one who is aiming to win it. That is, actually, I quite like that. I mean, I've said before I'm not a fan of orange, but I actually don't think he's got socks on, which is almost completely lost. Oh no, he's got white socks.
Oh no, look, he's got lovely
long
white socks.
I love that.
I think
I love
if anybody can bring you over to the orange, it's long flowing golden locks. Is that what we're saying?
Blonde locks. That's what I'm saying. The flowing blonde locks have has won it over for me. So good work, Hats, and hopefully we'll see him out on the climb because he's got the numbers for it. 20-minute power, 5 watts per kg. Pretty good numbers there.
Well, he reminds me, just simply seeing him sitting at the back here and knowing that he's got such good 20-minute numbers. He reminds me of a German rider, Judith Arndt, who was, of course, multiple world champion in the women on the road. In real life, she would absolutely crush Zwift if she was still racing. And she used to sit essentially at the front or the back. When she was at the back of the bunch, you kind of got a bit of fear in you because you knew that she was just waiting to go. It was kind of where she'd go hang out, so comfortable, just recovering, cruising while everybody else was sweating bullets at the front. And then she would launch and nobody would really have anything to answer with. That kind of initially reminds me of that, because for him to just be sitting so comfortably at the back when we know he's got all of that capability, I think he's probably just biding his time. And that is a good strategy. I just want to make sure that when they do go up that leg snapper, that he doesn't accidentally get caught behind a dropped wheel, because I think that could see him use more energy than he needs to.
Exactly, and as you were saying that, Kate, they actually hit the leg snapper, so great timing there on that comment. You can see just by all the power-ups being dropped, already straight up to 8%, and those numbers are all going orange, which is never a good sign if you're not feeling good, because that means they're basically sprinting up to the top, as we see a beast mode rider with Bevan from DPAC Elite right on his wheel. Apparently one of the best sprinters in the world is Bevan. So showing his Palmares here by staying right on the wheel, and looks like he'll roll over the top. I'm wondering if this is a little strategy to get through that sprint segment before everyone else. They've already gapped the field by 2 to 3 seconds, but it is a big bunch chasing, who, if they come together, will obviously move a lot faster than these two at the front on their own.
Well, it's sometimes for the sprinters, speaking from experience here, these leg snapper kind of climbs actually suit them quite well, because it's about 20 seconds worth of quite high powers, but it's not too dissimilar to the kind of effort you would put out in a sprint. So you often see kind of the more power-based sprinters, and we can unpack the different kinds of sprinters when we get to that segment, but you often see the quite power-based sprinters actually doing really well on those shorter, sharper climbs. I'm very impressed here to see Seb from Beast Mode at the front, because I think that kind of shows a little bit of composure and dominance from that team already, that the guys that they know have those big 20-minute powers are sitting in and looking after themselves, but the other riders are coming to the front and keeping more of an eye on that pace. So that's strategically, again, very good.
Yeah, and I think a good thing to, as we see actually just there, O'Connell from WTRL absolutely smoking off the front. That is an early start to the sprint. Massive numbers there, but Bevan and Hats, who we were talking about earlier, he is right up there, and he's pushing very hard. This is a great finish here from Bevan. Best sprinter in the game, not surprised. Look at that gap. Is that 14 watts per kg that he just hit there? Unreal. That was a sight to behold. Bevan there actually hit 20 watts per kg there for a second. That is phenomenal. So great asset to that DPAC team. I mean, that would be probably first across the line and fastest segment, unless someone came from the back and got a good draft. But wow, that was impressive.
You know what I love about Zwift is, regardless of even where they finish, you can really geek out on the numbers, and you can show, it's the old thing, like, what does success look like for you in a race? And often people will say it's, leaving it all out there and doing the best that you can, but that's a, fairly subjective kind of goal to put out there. But when you've got all of these numbers, whether or not they cross the line first at the end, we can still break it down and say they were a very impressive rider out on course, regardless of where they actually finish overall. So I do love these numbers, because when you see things go orange and those numbers really push up, they're such good athletes, aren't they?
Oh, like, Yeah, I mean, you can kind of get a bit lost in just sort of looking at them and being like, they look so comfortable because the avatars' faces aren't moving. But looking at those numbers, you can already see some of these heart rates as we go through. Small here from Z side, 175 beats a minute. I mean, gosh, only 8 kilometers in. There's a long way to go, and that is a very high heart rate. These guys have got to find a way to recover, and I think that's where people may get caught out in the racing tonight, as they just push so hard on this Innsbruck ring part instead of hiding in the bunch. I mean, the riders are good. If you look at where Beast Mode is, if you look at where DPAC is, so many of them are just hiding, sort of in the middle of that pack, just getting pulled along, knowing that, the biggest part of today's race comes at the end in that last climb.
Yeah, so they do need to save a little bit of energy, but as we've discussed, there's certainly different strategies out. There will be a lot of riders who know that once it comes to the climb, they'll essentially be like a lead balloon and go backwards. So this is their time to shine. Because they may be without any arsenal when it comes to that point. It's also interesting, I think, when we're looking at IRL, you kind of look at their physiques and you think about what weight they might be and what kind of climber they might be. But it is interesting to delve into those numbers and see what numbers they are. And I actually think, like, what weights they are. I think it's really good from a community perspective, because I know a lot of riders who are pretty new to the sport who say, "Oh, I can't climb, I'm a heavier rider." And I'm always trying to explain to people that that's not what defines whether you're a good climber or not. There's been equally as many athletes who are incredible sprinters and terrible climbers who are quite tiny and petite. So it is a bit of an indicator, but I think that this kind of allows you to hone what your capabilities are. And it certainly allows a team director to take feeling and emotion out of it and say, we can see that this is where you're suited.
Yeah, exactly. As you're talking there, Kate, I just actually pulled up the sprint stats of Bevan there, who we just got very much impressed by. Will be interesting to see how he does go on the climb. What you're saying about, whether you can climb if you're a bit weightier or a sprinter. I mean, I think we're going to find that out with this kind of a rider, but he's got a 3-second personal best of 21.67 watts per kg. A 1 minute of 10.79 watts per kg. So no wonder he's absolutely dominating the leg snapper, because that climb only takes around 30 seconds. So extremely good racer here. Actually switched to e-racing because so many of the IRL in real life racing events were cancelled. Says he's a sprinter by nature, but is not put off by a testing course, which I would definitely say is this one.
Yeah, well, I have to go back to when we were speaking off air, and I said this was just horrendous to go out on course thinking about racing, and you kind of had a naughty little giggle like you loved it. And I think we need to think that there will be some riders out on course who just from the get-go are like, okay, I've essentially gotten to the bottom of the climb to do my thing because then I'm out. And there'll be some others that are kind of stealing themselves. I saw Sam Lindsay pop his head up there. He's in the middle. Let's just take a look at these bonus points so far. James Bevan, the DPAC rider, he's the one we've been talking about with these incredible numbers. Christopher Hatz in second there with 9 points. Again, DPAC, Beast Mode. These are the two we've been looking at. We've got with Cryogen there, James Samuel in third. Seb, Beast Mode, Fabian Davola, DPAC. I mean, this is starting to become quite a familiar story. Now, Davola, he's a very good sprinter. I do think that he might not be loving the climb that is coming up. And I've got to say the Germans are a bit of an unknown entity. We can look at their power numbers and suggest who may be their riders, and it is often a very good indicator. But we have to remember that the numbers that we see in terms of peak powers in Zwift Power, that is their best. And we don't know at what cycle of their training they are or where they are at in comparison to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And I think, I look at a workout I did last night and all the workouts, are based off your FTP. And I had to immediately lower it because I felt terrible. I mean, you can't lower an effect like that when you're racing. So I think sometimes the numbers are great because you see them all, but then there's a bit of pressure, like, oh, my FTP is 300, but today I'm barely holding 280. So people have got to be a bit easy on themselves as well. Just that, like you said, you're not going to feel great every time. And especially because when you're hitting basically that FTP test at the end of tonight's racing, these guys are already sitting at threshold heart rate for the first, what might be 30 minutes. So it's not easy to hit those numbers in every single race. And, I know I've gotten off the trainer a fair few times feeling super disappointed that I haven't set, new numbers, but, that's just the way it is. And some people have great races, and I think we'll see some emerging stars in this race, but others who we think might be really great just sort of drop off the pace and it's all been a bit too much.
It's always a question that comes up in our bunch rides. What's the best way to check your FTP? Is it to go out and do one of those horrendous FTP tests in Zwift? And I always tell people to just go find a climbing game that they like, that is long enough, and this one is, that it will take you over that FTP time frame, so that, because it's kind of better when you're not just staring at the numbers, when you're riding a climb and you're trying to push it. So it does go a fair bit to mindset, I think, and it very much depends what your heart rate is at the bottom as to kind of how mentally resilient you can be. Because if you're really comfortable heading into the bottom of the climb, naturally it's a lot easier to be quite calm about any accelerations that happen, and how you may be able to react, which is quite different to if your heart rate's 175 at the bottom already. You don't really have a lot of room for movement there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge part of this racing and this kind of course is just confidence. Like if you can go into that climb being confident that you can beat a lot of the people around you, you usually have a good one, because when it starts to hurt, you'll know everyone else is hurting just as much, if not more. I think when you're not feeling confident and you start to hurt a little bit, then you start to drop a little bit and just feel a bit sort of dejected. We are watching Bevan here, who's just, we're talking about his amazing sprint numbers before. He's just dropping off the back ever so slightly and not really pushing high watts. Heart rate not, in the 170s. So just needs to be careful here. I'm not sure what he's playing at, but this is danger zone. He can't drop off here. He needs to pull his socks up and get ready for that next sprint.
I actually think he's probably hurting a little bit, because it is much harder sitting off the back there, and his heart rate does continue to creep up. So whether he was a bit more off the back and he's just making his way back there, but even a second, so it's only 1 second gap, but 1 second actually can feel like hell in Zwift. And of course you get those terrible notifications pop up. Now they're heading onto the leg snapper now. We can see on right of screen that incline there, 8%. Yelchi, all of those power-ups are being dropped. We're watching Hunt here. He's mid-pack. But look at these gaps are really starting to open, and the power has been dropped at the front here. This is a big gap that's starting to open up, and everything's orange on right.
Emmerich from Beast Mode. This is laying down a charge for sure. This is saying, who can come with me? At the moment, no one. Morgan from Evo doing quite well, but and a ZWC rider. But this is a definite little prod from the Beast Mode team saying, what do you got? Because we've got a lot, and they've come with a lot of arsenal. Like I said, they've probably got one of the best climbers, I think, on paper, out racing. And Emmerich here pushing huge numbers to crown over that leg snapper well ahead, about 3 seconds ahead of the rest of this group. And that group chasing, tiny, only about 5 riders. So if the others can't come back, this could be a bit of a split.
Well, Jan Emmerich, I mean, his heart rate went pretty high there. It went up to nearly 190. So he was obviously laying the power down. I noticed last lap he actually went over the leg snapper sitting in second spot. So he obviously has pretty good legs today. The difference is Bevan, who's been tailed off the back a little bit. It will be interesting to see where he comes out heading into this next sprint. So the sprint is obviously important for points, and that leg snapper is a very big lead into that, because so many gaps to open. Now this has all bunched back up, but it is each lap a much smaller bunch than we have. So we can see, check this out, if we just took a look on the left there at the segment times, 14.48 is where Bevan was at. There we are there, 14.48. That is so fast. 14.82 sitting there in second. And they're opening up that sprint again. These power-ups are being dropped. Whatever they have, they're throwing it all out there. It's Devola who's accelerating at the front. Sam Lindsay, he is also on the move. So DPAC, they are well represented through there. A few beast mode riders as well. Anna, they're certainly not just sitting back and letting this race happen.
No, and that was a cryo rider I saw, I think, just coming through, timing it perfectly. Maybe going for that segment time, just coming through from about mid-pack, maybe Jay Samuel there. So very close to Bevan's time, but not quite. I mean, I can see some of the comments coming through about Bevan. He's got a lot of fans out there. David Hoffmeyer over on YouTube saying that there's not a better sprinter than Bevan in all of Zwift. So that's been quite obvious that Bevan's points and strategy has been to go for that fastest segment time on that first lap, and then he just kind of fell off the back and job done. Unfortunately, it's still a long day in the saddle because he has got to finish the race, and that's a long climb ahead that he may be doing a bit solo, but good for him to get those points. He can carry through that glory as motivation to get through the Innsbruck KOM, but good job there from DPAC. I think they've winning here with a bit of the strategy. I like what they're doing.
Oh, look, and to be honest, I think he's really impressed everybody tonight. So if his decision, once he gets to the bottom of the climb, if the team strategy is for him to effectively just sit up and roll it in, then that is something. But a difference this season to last season, Anna, is that this time the points go 80 deep. So that is a bit of a game changer because it means that they've got to keep riding all the way to the line, whereas last season, from memory, it was only 30 deep. That's quite a big difference. It'll really mean that the riders have to really push all the way. So now we're taking a look at the Div 2 A's as well, and they have been broken up into Div 1 and Div 2 by the sheer amount of entries in the A grade, which is such an encouraging thing overall, I think, in the racing. So not too dissimilar speeds here, Anna. They're also racing pretty hard, but a bit of a smaller pack.
Yeah, it looks like something's happened to this pack, and they've really broken off 48 seconds back to the chasing back behind them. So this has been quite the breakup in this Div 2 category. Amazing. I don't know what would have happened. I'm assuming on the leg snapper they just broke away, but unfortunate for that group behind because 48 seconds is a long way and they might just be gone as they are approaching the sprint stage here, and it looks like some of the ZWC riders in the yellow, I do believe, are coming through very quickly. Blue hat there on the front, Goyini from Peter Z. Oh, nice head-to-head battle there from Nakagawa from ZWC. I think Nakagawa just got it at the end. That was a good battle there, right to the line. Be interesting to see what those points are when they come through. You can see a disc wheel there in that pink kit. That disc wheel shows that that rider is purely going for sprints because that disc wheel will be like a lead balloon up the climb. But good work there from ZWC. They've done pretty well on that sprint.
Yeah, and I'm noticing it's coming back together quite well after the sprint, which is good as well. And I think that indicates that it's a bit conservative. It's almost like they're letting people go up for the sprints, but they're not just sitting up and letting them ride away with the race. And that says to me that it's pretty competitive and people really have their eye on that final sprint and want to make sure they have a good wheel to follow. It is a very big difference. We spoke earlier, Anna, about what happens when riders drop the wheel. Let's just take a quick look at the standings so far. Team ZWC, the Allies, they are on top there. Oral 7 in second. All for Cake, I'm going to say that they are the brother-sister of We Ate the Cake for the women. And the Vivadors are sitting in fourth. So the top four teams are actually all fairly close in contention there. And it'll make it good racing. So we spoke earlier about, how some riders who we expect to climb pretty well may not be there, may have a bit of a gap open up in front of them and have to chase. I think no matter how good a climber you are, if you have had to have your face in the wind the whole time leading into that climb, you are just at such a massive disadvantage. So with all these accelerations over the leg snapper and through those intermediate sprints, you actually have to be pretty diligent. You kind of can't afford, even if you know that the climb really suits you, you can't afford to just sit at the back and get towed around, because we're seeing that is not happening. There is no bunch just cruising to the finish or to the bottom of that climb.
Yeah, exactly. We are just going to cross over to the women who have started the climb. I've been following them a bit on Zwift Power Live. Looks like Aero seems to be doing quite well with Jessica Bemrose leading the charge. They've already dropped some Z Sun riders. Looks like they've got a front group of about four, I believe, with a yeah, about four there. So just one Z Sun rider with that Aero helmet. That's Danette Shaw, I think it is. Yes. So great job there, Danette. She's the lone Z Sunrider surrounded by green and gold of the Aero team. So Bemrose, Patterson, and Garland. Garland, I know, is an extremely aggressive rider and doing really well. And we can see the points have pulled up to Grace Smith with that dislocated finger, pulling in great points across those sprints. Has been dropped now from this group, but Meredith Clark pulling in a good amount too from Aero. Jenny Patterson, Kath McKay, Kim Garland, Jess Bemrose. Man, that Aero team has basically cleaned up almost that whole top 10 of points.
So this is kind of where it gets interesting, because this is a long slog, this climb. Now, there's different styles of climbers. I'm the style that is not at all a climber, but there are some climbers that are like Alberto Contador, who gets out of his seat and dances up the climbs and accelerates with such ease. Very dynamic is what I would say. And on a climb like this, those kind of riders, their power profile is a lot of spikes. So they'll get out of their seat for 10 seconds, really accelerate, and then settle back into a nice rhythm. That can really snap the legs of the other kind of climbers who are a bit more diesel-like and don't tolerate those accelerations much. I always say to people who are new to riding, and especially new to doing long climbs, that the key to climbing well is not about whether you're a good climber or not. It's about figuring out what kind of climber you are and making sure you stay as true to that as you can. So if that means that sometimes a few gaps open up and you just kind of mow it back down, then you have to stay true to the style of rider you are. Otherwise, you will absolutely mushroom cloud at some point up the climb. So I'm watching Pettinan accelerate away here, but I don't think this is too much of a danger, especially for Kim Garland, who's sitting about 4 seconds back now. But we know that Kim is a fairly solid kind of diesel style rider, and she can motor back up when it comes to it. So we have to consider that as well, the different styles of riders that they are on this. But it's at 10%. There's no one that's doing it easy here. 186 heart rate, and they are all absolutely in the red zone. And the only way to get out of the red zone is to get to the finish.
Yeah, this is uncomfortable. 10, 11% pattern in here, pulling away at 4.8 watts per kg. This is insane. I mean, if you can look at that elevation map on the top right, though, they are approaching their second flat area. So maybe she was just putting in a bit of a push to get here with a bit of a lead, and it will take a bit of time to recover. So it has dropped down to 5%, 4% through this village, which may benefit her now that she's got the lead, and this is quite a lead. 5 seconds now on Bemrose behind her, Danette 11 seconds back, Garland 14 seconds back now. So this has been a move, and I think I'm going to call it. I think this could be one that goes right to the end, because she'll get some motivation, or she'll get some good vibes from this attack, and seeing those people that she's dropping behind her, as Bemrose behind her is only down to about 2.7 watts a kg. So Patton in here, I think that could have been the winning move.
And interesting, it wasn't an explosive attack so much as she just kind of rode away from them. Now, the men, I believe, are going over there last time around the leg snapper, so they're now not too far from the bottom of the climb as well. Let's just take a bit of a look at the Div 1s here. We saw Bevan do an amazing job and impress a lot, but it was Emmerich who he went over in second the first time around, in first the second time around. That can be a little bit confusing if you're not keeping up. But I do think so far that DPAC, certainly Beast Mode and Evo are the three teams who have really been pushing the pace quite a lot so far.
Yeah, I think I said at the start that I was really looking forward to racing this course, and now watching it, I'm just not so sure. I think this is starting to look horrible.
I'm actually
Um,
happy to hear that.
so it's yeah, those heart rates are really high, and this is looking pretty brutal. I mean, there's a lot of orange at the front. What I'm interested in though is this lead rider, I think from beast mode. One of them has got a really basic Zwift setup, which tells me that maybe they're not pretty new to the platform. I know beast mode is made up of a lot of professional German riders, potentially because it's winter over there. A few of them have jumped on Zwift, but they may not have the experience that the DPAC and the ZWC riders have. So beast mode, they've definitely got the power numbers, but whether they've got the Zwift nuances and the strategy to follow it through, we'll have to see.
Well, we've still got about 40 riders in the front group. They come over that leg snapper. That's hard enough on its own, but then they go into the sprint, and I think that's kind of a double whammy for them. But with 40 so far, it's still a pretty good pack, which means there's still a lot of places that they can hide. But that is all about to change, and I think there'll be a fair bit of posturing going on to make sure that they hit the bottom of that climb in as good a position as possible. We've got a bit of a move happening here. Alessio Leo from Cicli Stefanelli, that is a new Italian team on the scene so far. The power-ups are being dropped. They're coming into their sprint now. He's moved early, but Seb from Beast Mode, look at this, Beast Mode with the numbers. Zilzi, they are really lining up to get to the bottom
Oh,
of this climb in very good shape because there's 4 of them up the front there. DPAC, keep your eyes open, boys, because I think this is where it's all about to happen.
yeah. I mean, what do you think of the strategy, Kate? You look at in the real world when they hit a climb, sometimes they'll have a rider go off the front, so they've got a rider further up the road, and then they have their actual critical climber chase up, get on, get a bit of a draft for a while, recover off their rider, and then that rider just drops off. Is this a strategy you think you could use for this kind of a climb coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that when they get to the bottom of the climb, if you're not a climber, it doesn't really matter whether you're fresh or you're not fresh. So the best way to use up the riders in the team that don't think that they thrive up the climb, so to speak, and it would be unusual to have 6 on this. It wouldn't be smart to have 6 on this course that are all pure climbers based on the points available in those segments. But now is the time where those guys may as well keep the pace pretty high for the climbers, spread it out to a point where that they can move comfortably to the front. They don't have to worry about positioning too much. I do think it's a pretty smart move.
Mm, yeah, I mean, I think just even
You
seeing
don't
all
sound
those.
convinced.
I'm like, not sure. We'll see. I think one thing that beast mode is doing very well is intimidation, because that those images we saw before about with all 5 or even 6 of them all in that front group off the sprint with I think Lindsay from DPAC smashing it to get back on. Oh, that's got to play into the psyche a little bit to see so much of those beast mode guys up there, and you can already see on those bonus points beast mode taking out first and second, with the bonus points that are on offer around the sprint stages of that leg snapper Innsbruck ring course. Seb 4th beast mode, so these guys, 4 of them in the top, no, 3 in the top 4. Impressive, really impressive.
Yeah, I actually feel like in the first 2 weeks they just got beaten so marginally by Deepak. I feel like it's made them a little bit grumpy, perhaps, and they've turned up tonight with a little bit more grunt to say, okay, it's our turn now to do this. Regardless of what happens from here on in, we do know that they've turned up with that. I think you called it a bit of an intimidation strategy. Like they have shown everybody that they're here to race and that they're here to race hard. And so far, they've put on a very good show. Now, they've just gone through that start-finish banner, which means that they get another power-up under their belt. They would be, a lot of them, hoping that it's a feather. Some of the others won't be necessarily very helpful on that climb, but this is where they all kind of need to drop those shoulders away from the ears, take a big drink, and suck in some big breaths as well, because it is about to get very serious.
Yeah, it's not going to be pleasant. We're saying actually this is a pretty low heart rate here though from Emmerich from beast mode, 155 beats a minute. So this rider's riding pretty smart here, just sitting in the pack. A good cadence there. There are a lot of orange jerseys. They've all made that front cut, and yeah, looks as though they're going to be playing this well. I'm very very intrigued to see how this is going to go up the climb because I'm feeling nervous for Deepak. I think Beast Mode may take this out. I think they've played some strategies pretty well.
Yeah, there's still 40 riders in there, so they've all got pretty full teams thus far. I think that Deepak certainly have a couple of options under their belt, but we'll know pretty quickly what's going to happen. Over in the women, we're going to watch Jenny Pettinen absolutely dominate this A field, so incredible riding from her. I did think, because it was kind of absent of an attack, so much as more just powering away. I did actually think that Garland and Shaw might be able to motor back up to her, but maybe Pettinen heard that and she absolutely dropped the accelerator. She's ridden away. Her avatar delightfully looks very comfortable. I'm sure if we could see her face based on those numbers, she may not look quite as comfortable. But Anna, interestingly, her heart rate is fairly under control, which says to me that she's really in her element here. She's got a very big gap, and she's just motoring along, keeping that pace high, and nobody within cooee of her.
Yeah, Danette Shaw and Bemrose here will have a great little battle to the finish line. I just actually want to follow. Can we get a close up of those wheels of Pattinens? Because that's what I've been intrigued by in the racing tonight is what wheels you go with that Specialized Tarmac Pro. That's a definite looks like Mellenstein. So she has gone a full climbing setup. I mean, this is making some light bulbs go off in my head for tomorrow because I think if you've got a good team around you and you can get in the draft for that Innsbruck ring course, you just have the lightest bike possible and maybe you'll be able to pull away like she has. I mean, amazing finish here from Pattinen. Huge, almost a minute on those behind.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic ride. And look, she dominated from very early on in the slopes and just consolidated on that lead. Bemrose here, Jessica Bemrose is going to finish quite comfortably with Danette Shaw. They have managed to roll in together, but they, as we can see, they are not from the same team. So they will be sprinting all the way to the line. Kind of nothing worse than having to sprint at the top of a climb. But it is a race, and it looks like Danette Shaw has gone early. She's in the orange. Will Jessica Bemrose be able to answer that? I do not think she will be able to, but she's certainly trying, both in the orange, pushing all the way to the line. Heart rates are very high, quite in contrast to Pettinen a few moments ago, and they are riding all the way to the line. So very big ride by Shaw. Early on, Anna, you said that she wasn't looking good, and I do think we need to learn our lesson, actually. I think every week, if she starts a bit slow, she's probably just winding it up.
Exactly, and yeah, maybe that lighter bike setup just meant there was a little bit of speed sacrificed on the flatter portions, but we saw that definitely paid off on the climb. The men here, ACAT Div 1, have just started this climb. You saw them just go past that red little flashing light on the road, and I see a lot of pink Tron bikes. I know that there's some Evo riders in there. They're in that magenta kit. Beast mode tucked in somewhere, not as prevalent as they were before, but they've definitely come to the forefront as well. And a cryo rider just pushing off the front here. Bit of a strategy here, to be honest, would maybe just be pushed pretty hard to get to that first flat stage and try and destroy the pack a bit, have a bit of time to recover and just see what's left and go from there. I wouldn't want to see what's happened in the Prem men's division, which is a sprint at the end of this climb. I just think that would be an absolute horrific way to finish a 20-minute all power effort.
What I'm laughing at it because at the beginning of this you were like, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. It's great," and now your language has turned to use words like horrendous. So I have a feeling that watching them race up here and seeing the numbers is slightly more intimidating. It's interesting to see power ups being used so early on the climb. Now this may be Costa trying to establish a gap and using his power up to do so, it isn't really working, and I think he'll pay for that a bit at the back end. But the fact that he has a Tron bike means he's done a lot of climbing in game, so he wouldn't be unfamiliar with this course. It is a course that is often available in the world, and a lot of them will have ridden this course quite often. Now, they started with about 40, Anna. It's already gone from blob to straight single line. They're up already around the 10% mark. This is that first section. I think this will cause quite a big split, but maybe they'll get a chance to catch a breath on the in-between. I honestly don't think we'll see DPAC and Beast Mode come to their end until further on in the climb.
Yeah, so I think looking here, that cryo attack was probably just a little bit too excited. Just went off a bit too early. These guys have rolled that in pretty quick, and they go around these corners, which really kick up. They flatten off around the corner and then kick up pretty suddenly again. So there's a lot of parts of this course where you can get little micro bursts of recovery that then go up a little bit hard. So if you know this climb well, I mean, I don't know how many people would actually go and do this a lot as a training ride. It's not a climb like an epic climb where you kind of tend to have a lot of races on it. So it's a climb that not many people would know the ins and outs of. And yeah, it's going to be a tricky one to see who can pull away and who can race this smart. But the field is getting strung out for sure. Lindsay off the front, riding at 7 watts a kg. This is a concerted attack. Early on these climbs. They are just about sort of heading into that first third where they might get a little bit of recovery, but Lindsay is he's laying the gauntlet down, that's for sure.
Well, we saw Sam Lindsay really come into his own on that New York course. We know he can climb. So it doesn't surprise me, but this is still a long way to go. Magga, you got it.
Yeah, so this is, I'm not sure what perhaps Lindsay is doing with this attack, because it's not a massive attack off the front where he's gapping them. He's just sort of increasing the pace, turning the dial a little bit, hitting those, 6+ watts per kg. But the other riders, you've got the cryo rider who's just caught onto his wheel. You've got some of the others. You can see you've got just the riders pretty stretched out, maybe a little bit of a gap forming. It looks like they've got 3 groups now on this climb. But Lindsay, what do you think he's doing here, Kate? I'm not sure about this one.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting tactic because you can send a strong climber out early just to string it out and hurt some legs. And I think that maybe that's what he's doing because this is really stringing out now.
Yeah, it's you can already see though on that map he has created a break here with about 3 seconds back to a bigger group that has a lot of those beast mode riders. That's a great angle there. You can just see that is a definite break there in the pack. Maybe that first group is about 12 and then I would say almost a 5-second gap. 10 seconds back with some of them. They're struggling. So this is that little dig there from Lindsay, now being led out by O'Connell from WTRL. This has put a lot of suffering onto those legs and good work because it has divided the pack up. You've got Morgan in there from DPAC, Lindsay from DPAC, McKee from DPAC. So they're doing pretty well. 3 riders in there. Then you've just, I think, only got 1 or 2 from Beast Mode who have made that front group. Just 2, I think. So nice work there from DPAC. That was a good strategy there to break it all up.
Well, I mean, it's coming down a lot. So remember they started with 40 here. Interestingly, I actually think it's a bit on again, off again with the way that they're climbing. That snaps a fair few legs.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, you don't want to start a climb with someone riding 6.8 watts a kg. It's just so demoralizing to watch that go up the road and think, I can't even hold that for 5 minutes, let alone 20. But if you look already, it's dropped back to 4.7 watts a kg. So that was a nice little turn of pace that has turned the corkscrew on a few of those riders behind, and I like it. I think there was a strategy that worked, and let's see if that pans out for the finish, because I'm wondering if Lindsay is going to go for the win from DPAC, or maybe Morgan, or even McKee here. 2 beast mode, and it looks like we've got a World Elite Zwifter in there and a ZWC rider. Now, the ZWC riders always tend to be a bit on the lighter side and the better climbers, so probably a good person to keep an eye on there. But I'm not seeing some of those beast mode riders I thought would be in the front. Yeah, it looks like Zilzy here from Beast Mode has actually just managed to catch back on, riding about 6.2 watts, burning quite a few matches to get on the back here, but that may bring up now they've got 2 riders in the front. Tiem about 12 seconds back. Oh, I don't think he may not make that on. He pushed it up really high. He's burning a lot of matches there to get back onto this group. Might just be time to sort of just ease off a little bit. They are going through this flatter portion. Ease off, lower that heart rate, and then pick it up again. McKee here, though, from DPAC Elite, 187 beats a minute. He is pushing hard. And Lindsay's tucked right on as well. Looks like these guys are doing a bit of a 1-2 effort here as Lindsay moves up again. They hit her. They've just gone through that second flat portion, back up to 8%. It's going to pick up even more. And Lindsay, 9.4 watts a kg. He means business. He is pushing very, very hard. He's got a nice climbing rig set up. He was definitely settling in for the climb today. We didn't see him much on the Innsbruck ring course. I'm liking what he's done here. He's picked the climbing bike. He's put in a few attacks. He's putting the herd on. You can already see those riders 2, 4, 6 seconds back. And that's great work there from Lindsay. I mean, he is a favourite of mine, but I do think that strategy definitely worked.
Well, you're allowed to have favourites. I mean, I always cheer for the Aussies as well. Interesting, isn't it, that in the APAC division, there's actually a lot of Japanese riders and a lot of Germans and an Italian team as well. So we're actually a bit light on the Aussies. So come on, Aussies, jump on board the APAC League. But listen, Sam Lindsay, it is interesting if you look at the strategies, because at the bottom of this climb, we were really kind of gearing up for beast mode to be hitting it really hard. I wonder if maybe they knew that they weren't necessarily in the form for this climb, and so they kind of went more for the intimidating tactics and made everybody a little bit scared of them. Because I've got to say that they've been slightly underwhelming now that they are up on these steep slopes.
Yeah, I think from looking at the intermediary points, they might have just known they didn't have the climbing legs on their team, and they just tried to sweep up as many of those sprint points as they could, and they got a lot, 3 in the top 4, and then have obviously not been able to perform on this climb. They'll still have riders in the top 80, obviously, and you've got a rider sitting there, looks like in about 6th or 7th place, so they're not too badly placed, but I mean, Deepak here for the win, I think. Although you do have this cryogen rider who's managed to get on the wheel of Lindsay, and I don't think he's going to like that. I think he would have preferred to have soloed away with this one. It's always nicer to sort of finish like we saw in the women's race with Patterson, just, being able to cruise that last kilometre of a climb. It's always a nice feeling knowing you're not going to get caught. And these two working together, oh, God, that's going to make for a very hard last third of this climb.
Yeah, I know that based on your choice of adjective, I know that you're not particularly fond of having a sprint finish at the top of a climb, and fair enough too, I might say. But look, Sam Lindsay can sprint as well, because we've seen, especially in season 1, he's got a pretty wicked turn of speed. So it might not be too bad. But interestingly here, they are starting to regroup a little bit. Heidemann, now look at this. This is a bit of a power move. He was in the orange there. He is really accelerating across. They're at 5 seconds, but that is closing really rapidly. And he's just been sitting over 7 watts per kg, just kind of powering across on this slightly flatter section here. All of a sudden, within the space of about 15 seconds, I don't think our cryogen rider is Sam Lindsay's biggest problem.
No, that's great work there by Heidemann, and I think this is showing a little bit of an issue for Lindsay, because if he went too hard to break the pattern, has gone too hard to be able to hold it, then these riders would all start catching up, and that's not going to be pleasant for him, as he's burnt a lot of matches. And on these kind of climbs, 4 seconds, unlike the flat, isn't actually too much because you can get out of the saddle, put in a few bits of a dig, get up to a steeper part of the course like this 11, 12%, and you can actually catch up fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is not the easiest way to ride a climb. Um, even mentally having that gap open up and relying on the legs to be able to bridge it. But we have talked quite often about the different kinds of climbers that they are, and it does kind of show us, doesn't it, how a long climb can play out when you do have those dynamics going on. Now, interestingly, that gap from Heidemann has opened back up to 9 seconds from Sam Lindsay. So if this hasn't changed flavour quite as we thought it looked like it was going to be, but there are about 8 riders kind of within cooey, I would say, of joining back on. But Sam Lindsay doesn't look like he's relenting at all. He's back up over that 6 watts per kg. If he can continue to kind of bash out those numbers, I think it'll be very hard for them to get caught. But it does mean that they don't have the opportunity to back off it all and get ready for the cat and mouse of a sprint if it does come to a sprint at the finish, because that gap just isn't big enough to be able to do that. That'll make it a little bit harder and a little bit more stressful for those two at the front.
Yeah, and the cryogen rider is not doing any, well, I mean, he's working because he's going uphill, but he's just sitting there on the wheel of Lindsay. And that's not a great thing for Lindsay if it does come down to a sprint, because that cryo rider has been able to just sort of somewhat relax there in the slipstream. We're down to the last flat kind of portion. By flat, it's still 5%. But this is where that cryo rider can just get on the wheel, although he is pushing around a little bit and doing some work here on the flatter part of the course. But Strachan here from Z Sun, he's catching up pretty fast, 6.3 watts on this flatter part. So this is a little key tip, is that the riders off the front will often use these flat portions as recovery. If you are feeling okay and you can just TT it basically along the flatter portions, you can get a lot of time in, which is what Strachan has done here. 3 seconds behind Lindsay now. They're in his sights. I think he's going to end up catching up.
Well, and Paul O'Connell from the Pioneers, he's not too far behind either, and that gap isn't opening up even further, which is encouraging. Hashimoto not too far behind that. Strachan, he is about to bridge across, but isn't it at this point when it's pitching up to 6, 7, 8%, even 1 or 2 seconds, even when they're in sight, it does definitely not mean they can catch up. And as we say that, look, that gap has dropped back to 6 seconds where it was 3, and that was entirely because of the acceleration of our cryogen rider in K Churt, we'll call him, because he hasn't given us much more to work with there, even in Zwift Power. Sam Lindsay, he's sitting on quite comfortably. A good acceleration like that, it indicates to me that he's still got a bit left in their legs. I'm interested. We're not seeing our Evo riders up there as much this week. They do, I think, suit those flat courses a little bit more. And it is kind of good when they mix up the courses and we get to see the different strengths of the teams, but they will certainly be a force to be reckoned with in weeks to come. But Sam Lindsay for DPAC and Cryogen, they have placed themselves exceptionally well. I love, Anna, that it hasn't just blown out into this massive gap, 2 riders ridden away, and it's not still a bike race. They can see the finish. The sprint is on. The power-ups are being dropped. Sam Lindsay needs to answer this call because it's been KCH that has accelerated early. Sam Lindsay goes. I think he'll get this, Anna.
I think he's going to get it. That was amazing. He's got all but the cryo rider. Oh, Sam Lindsay's got the aero power up. He's got to go harder. This cryo rider is riding 15, 13 watts a kg. Oh, that's devastating for Lindsay. That rider just absolutely blew him apart in that final sprint. That's some unbelievable riding, because we know Sam Lindsay can sprint. So that was Pretty phenomenal there from that cryo rider. We're seeing third place coming in here from Zsan Strachan, just sort of rolling through now. He's got an 8-second lead on Hashimoto, but it looks like the next three are all riding together, dropping aero power-ups. This is definitely a tired leg sprint. Lawrence here from Worldly Zwift is going off on the front, but it looks like went a little too early. And the ZWC rider Hashimoto rounded out that top 4. So great ride in there. And Heidemann, there he is. He made a good little attack, almost got back onto that top group, but rolling through the finish line now.
Yeah, Heidemann, I was impressed with that mid-climb acceleration. I think that was kind of his last-ditch effort to try and get bridge across. Zilsa from Beast Mode there. Look, they put on a pretty good show today in the early parts of the race. Emmerich, he was sensational up that leg snapper in the shorter climbs and also the intermediate sprint. So we know that he's got a lot of gas in the tank when he needs to. I love that they're sprinting all the way to the line because the points do quite deep now, so it all does count. And I think it's worth noting also that the dynamic is changed a bit because it's points, not time. So it doesn't matter that they are about a minute adrift of the leaders because it all does come down to just those points. So they do sprint all the way to the line, which is great to see. And you mentioned that watching them all sprint at the end. It's one of the funnier things you'll ever see watching the climbers try and do a sprint finish. It kind of makes you appreciate the sprinters that little bit more. But, when it comes down to it, doesn't surprise me that Sam Lindsay was carrying a bit of fatigue. But I think that we saw a bit of an unknown from Keicher there. And Cryogen, they kind of pulled that out of the bag, which was pretty impressive. Now we're looking at the A group at Div 2 here. So Oral 7, they're sitting second overall in the team classification thus far. But these pair, Cutler and Yama, they've got a 41-second gap at this point in the race. That is not going to come back down. They can afford to do a little bit of cat and mouse here. Lower cadence. Their legs are hurting a little bit, but they're still putting out pretty high powers. So I dare say if we could see their faces, Anna, there'd be a bit of rocking and rolling going on the trainer.
For sure. I do like Yama's blonde mohawk, and it looks like a blonde goatee as well. It's a great lot of facial hair choice there from Yama. There we go. It's that's a great look. I love it. It's like facial hair that matches the shoes. That's awesome.
Between the facial hair and the aero helmet, it's quite a combo, isn't it?
It is quite a combo. Two very different styles. We'll see how the aero helmet fares if they do end up in a sprint finish. They are coming to this last sort of kick to the line. They can almost see it. You're sort of watching that map on the right-hand side when you're going up this, just going, oh, how close are we to that finish line at the top of this mountain? And it just seems to just take ages for that little orange dot of yours to move closer and closer. But they are on this last sort of 10% push-up, and then it does flatten off, as we've seen before, and these guys will be in a sprint for the line. And you mentioned before seeing climbers sprint. I always know watching the Tour de France, the climbers who sprint, I always think just look like kind of gangly grasshoppers on their bike, just sort of like all limbs just moving left, right and center. And it's quite entertaining.
Yeah, it's not probably the prettiest thing that you'll ever watch in cycling, with absolutely no disrespect to the climbers. I think I probably dreamed that I might ever have been called long and gangly by a commentator. Alas, Anna, that did never happen. But it is. I think even psychologically, it's quite an interesting thing for the climbers who often just are focusing on getting into that real climbing rhythm, and it's a bit of a tough one to then have to face a sprint at the finish. So not just physically, but even a lot of them, they very rarely even sprint and have to think about the strategy of the sprint. With a 2 up, it's not too bad, but still go too early. And I think that's probably what Sam Lindsay did. He probably went a little bit too early, just reacted and thought he needed to. And that may not have cost him the win, but I think it was probably could have been closer. And will be next time if they get back in that position.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see how these guys may differ. There's definitely a little bit of a jostling going on here. Looks like Yama has just taken a little bit of a bypass here, maybe some Wi-Fi issues. That is a devastating place to have a dropout.
Oh
He's disappeared,
no!
and that
Oh,
literally, oh gosh, like 400 meters from the end. That is tragedy for Yama. Oh, I
well,
feel for
look,
him. It
Anna,
really is horrible.
you had to carry the commentary for a little while because I had a kid flat with a small human come in. So it is possible that he's had a kid flat with a small human come in and unplug the power cord. Devastating when that happens, but we do know it does.
Oh,
Good for Cutler. He doesn't have. Oh,
oh, he's
he's
back.
back.
He's
He's back
back.
and he's gone straight past him. Oh, this is
Oh, he's a
drama to
magician.
the very end for Cutler. Wow, that was
Oh, wow.
sneaky. That was like the invisibility cloak in Harry Potter or something. I want to know how to use that
Oh,
in
that was
game.
awesome. Exactly. Wow. That would have caught his competition by surprise for sure. That was a finish I have not
Yeah,
seen before. So,
yeah. I mean, I feel like there might have been
oh.
three particular letters starting with W, T, and F that Cutler was muttering as that happened because where the heck did he come
Oh,
from? But, good ride.
oh,
Nakagawa, he is sprinting through. No, McGuellan it is. He is sprinting through for third, and Nakagawa will take fourth in this category. I've never seen anything like that. I'm still shaking my head how that even happened.
it's like he dropped the invisibility, but we know it wasn't here. So who knows? Maybe he's got some secret little coding in there that he disappears with 400 meters to go and then just appears at the finish line. But yeah, that was some serious magic action happening there in this division.
Yeah, that caused a little bit of excitement at the finish there. We've got Ojasan that we're looking at coming into the finish here. And looking down the list, I'm seeing a Bemrose. I'm wondering if that is related to Jessica Bemrose, who we just saw in the Div. Let's take a look at the Div 1Bs here. We're watching Nelson from Vision. He is up there. Tyso now from Tune Bike Works. They're pretty close to the top of this climb as well. By now, we've seen enough finishes on this climb that you start to really recognise how far to go it is for the riders, not just based on the kilometres. Now, the riders will have done their recon themselves, Anna, so they will also know the point at which they can accelerate and know that they'll make the finish without too much of a mushroom cloud. So it's not too far away now. We can see the banner in the top right of screen, albeit in the far distance. But these gaps are starting to open up. Tyso, he's pushing pretty hard, but Arbe is coming up, albeit just a tiny little bit at a time. And Tyso, well, he will need to react here because I think Arbe is going to just time it perfectly in that sprint. He's taking a bit of a rest. He's caught up. He's taking a bit of a breather. Now, can he time it right heading into this finish banner?
I think so. I think he's settled into that wheel. I'm going to say he's got a power up to drop. Not long to go now. Oh, disc wheel. That is unreal to be using that on a climb. And kudos to him because that's a huge bit of weight that he's just carried up this whole way. And be perfect for the sprint, though. That's going to add a great little benefit for the sprint finish. So let's see how these two go because I think AB with that disc wheel and hopefully a little power up will have this one in the bag.
Well, Tyso's certainly motoring a little bit faster, but Arbe, he's dropped the power up. He's in the orange. He's accelerating. He's blowing right past him. I think Tyso is down for the count. He is out for the day, and Arbe is going to take the victory here. Still in the orange. That is a very solid sprint at the end of such a long climb. You called it with the disc wheel. He looked very smooth there. Weatherall coming in here for third.
Yeah, I do actually. There's been quite a lot of commentary or comments on our commentary on YouTube, and Lindsay wrote up the KOM in a time of 15:30. The Premier League earlier today did it in 15:15. So that was a very, very quick ascension of this climb. 15. That's like I said, I think mine's about 21 minutes. So. Oof, can't believe how quick that took them. But it was a 15 minutes of pain as we see these B riders just finishing off this last ounce of pain, high heart rates. Four-person sprint coming through the line here, but it looks like Hogan from Velo Club is going to push through on that Tron bike. With Shanks coming through just behind, but good little sprint finishes here. Like we've said, points go 80 deep, so there's reason to try and beat all of those people around you, which we're seeing here, which is awesome.
So let's take a look at the Div 2Bs here. They're also coming into that critical part at the finish. 15:15 for Sam Lindsay. Mind blown. That is an incredible climbing effort from him. I love comparing it to the Prem League because last season we certainly saw in the team time trials some occasions where they would have placed first or second in Prem League with the effort. So we're actually looking just because we're community leagues, I think some people can think that this isn't the cream of the crop, but boy, would you be wrong, because incredible ride from Sam Lindsay there. Early drop of the power up from White. I don't know if that'll get him to the line. Jeff Morton racing. He is coming right up onto that wheel. This is a bit of a power struggle here because nobody's really accelerating more than the other. He's out of the seat. He's left it late, but he will take this. Look at that. Psyche was listening, Anna.
What an acceleration.
You hadn't accelerated on time, but well done. And Prince Lou, he is accelerating, but I also don't think he will be able to hold on into the finish here. Those that go too early pay the price here, Anna. Some pretty fatigued legs after that climb.
Oh, yeah, I think the people who have tucked in behind into the draft and then just sprint literally when they are about at the line are the ones who have seemed to have won it on this top part that flattens out. It's just such a horrible kind of way to end that climb because it will just end in a sprint because it's flat for that last 800 metres. It just seems so unfair to these guys. But they do get to go downhill now. They go have a nice long downhill to recover.
Yeah, well, you've got this to look forward to tomorrow, Anna. So hope you've learnt your lesson. I have a feeling like maybe you're not as excited for it today, right now, as you were at the beginning of the broadcast. Now, we'll look at the women's results in a second, but Jenny Pettinan, that was a beautiful ride up the climbs. She kind of almost never hit them so much as just turned that power on, and it was like a motorbike. She just accelerated away, and nobody could answer.
Yeah, and she picked perfect times to accelerate. She did it just when they could kind of got to like 9-10% and it would flatten off, but she'd push those flat parts and then push again, almost kind of teasing them, letting them catch up a little and then go off. So she did really well on that climb. She obviously did her homework. She knew it well.
Yeah, and she is a very good climber in real life, and I think that would really add some confidence coming into this Zwift racing when you know that you can ride with the best, certainly at domestic level. She's certainly, I think, got a natural confidence coming in. Let's take a look at the results and we can see how that all washed up for the women. So Jenny Pettinan, she did take that win, as we were just talking about, so impressive ahead of Danette Shaw. But big mention for her. We often talk about her as a sprinter, but that's a pretty solid result from a sprinter. So well done, Danette Shaw. Jessica Bemrose coming in third. Kim Garland in fourth. Kath McKay in fifth. Kiralee Carberry coming in sixth. Meredith Clark in seventh. Jen Reid, she's super impressive rider, and we'll see a lot more of her in the future in eighth. Grace Smith, she had some great sprints and then took it pretty easy on the climb. One to watch for the black courses coming up, and Jojo Zolberg rounded out that top 10.
And looking at Category B, Lam Kong winning that one. Kimberly Kern-Stokes, 46. So Lam had a huge lead there. Simone M in third. Melinda from AHDRL in fourth. Tracy Williams in fifth. Tess Waterhouse in sixth. Kate Braderick in seventh. Margarita, who also had some really good sprints that we saw early on, in eighth. Julia Wood in ninth. And Shabby Shabby in 10th.
Honestly, I love some of the names. Shabby Shabby's got to be one of my favourite. Aphie Reid, she took out the win for the Div C. Natalie Victor in second. Bit of irony with the name there, in Victor coming in second. Anyway, moving on. Sally Shuttleworth coming in third. Teresa Haler coming in fourth. Tamsin Law in fifth. Diane Meek in sixth. Kaz Turner, then Jodie Hamilton. There's a familiar name. In eighth. Ev Lau coming in ninth. And Fran M rounding out that top 10. So
And
the
the
D
D
women
women
are
are
only
still.
just finishing now. Sorry, Anna. So we've got G Miller coming across as the winner there, but we will get some more results, and you can check in at WTRL.racing to find out those results if they don't come in. But we can look at the overall team standings. Anna, I'll throw to you for this one.
Yeah, looks like Aero has just edged out Z Thunderstruck. So Aero had a great performance today with so many of those riders in the top 10, and that's paid benefits because Z Sun now in second with 58.
Let's take a look at the Div B, the Caffeines and TBR Smile On. Well, after 3 weeks, there's only 1 point between them, so very competitive league there. The Devil Kittens and the Squad Goals, they are yet to take the line, but we are only in week 3 of 8 weeks, so let's see what the coming weeks hold. The Div C, Anna?
AHDR, We Ate the Cake, who we saw today with a dominating performance, 60 points now. They're well ahead of the AHDRL Comets. AHDRL Spin Mafia just behind them. That'll be a good battle coming up. The Cruzettes in 4th, the CMA Queen Bees in 5th, Rave C in 6th, Herd of Bilbies in 7th, the CMA Girl Gang in 8th, and Cryogen Belfil in 9th.
Love a good girl gang. Now let's take a look at the men's A. This is what we've got. K-Ch. Love to know his full name. Get on it, guys. He took the win. Now, wasn't that a good sprint, Sam Lindsay? We had you picked for it, but brilliant ride from him, the Deepak rider. Hamish Strachan came in 3rd. Hashimoto in 4th. Paul O'Connell from the Pioneers came in 5th. Aidan Lawrence in 6th. Heidemann, that super impressive beast mode rider with that turn of acceleration midway through the climb. It just couldn't hold on to it. Ed Morgan, another Deepak rider there in 8th. Ben McKee in 9th. And Ollie Zilza, again, another beast mode rider, rounding out the top 10. Don't have any other results so far. Oh, wait, here we go. Anna, throw to you for the bees. They literally just roll in and surprise us in some moments.
We bring it to you hot off the press. Tomokazu Abe in 1st. That was a great finish from him. Taiso in 2nd. Max Weatherall in 3rd. Matt Nelson in 4th. Andre Fuegner in 5th. Sebastian Deniz in 6th. Dave Hogan in 7th. Darren Shanks in 8th. Richard Spear, who I think is a triathlete I've raced with actually, in 9th. And Michael Curley in 10th.
Oh, triathlete, he probably has a headband on, just like you. Let's see if we can get the C's up in a moment. They are just coming through. Let's take a look at the Div 2A. Of course, there is Div 1 and Div 2A grade because there's so many entries. So Zaki Yama took the win there with the invisibility cloak. Sounds like a game of Cluedo over Tim Cutler. McGuellan in 3rd. Shinya Nakagawa in 4th. Peter Wilkie came in 5th. Torben Partridge Madsen in 6th. That's a very regal name there. Matt Melville in 7th. Focus Ojasan in 8th. Goyini in 9th. And Kenta Endo rounded out the top 10.
And in B category, Jeff from Jeff Morton Racing in 1st, Andrew White in 2nd, Vance Nell in 3rd, Casper Prinsloo in 4th, Jonathan Hongkonger in 5th, Peshoy Valoria in 6th, Ian Haig in 7th, Abdul Iyah Mohammed in 8th, Eli Marcelo in 9th, and Noni Amistoso in 10th.
Well, let's take a look at the overall standings now. Ooh, we have a race on our hands. Deepak on 59 points. They still remain at the top, but Beast Mode on 58. I think it's fair to say that the coming weeks will be quite some interesting racing between those two. But we cannot forget the others that are chasing along there. Team ZWC Blast, they came in 3rd. They kind of flew under the radar a bit today, so that was an impressive ride from them. Cryogen, well, they took the win today with that impressive sprint at the finish ahead of Lindsay. Evo Savages, we know that they will be very good on the flat weeks to come. Wes, number 2, the World Elite Zwifters, they are in 6th. Smoother Z Sun in 7th. WMZ All-Stars sitting in 8th. Sickly Stefanelli, the new squad out of Italy, they are finding their feet and they're in 9th. The Big Ring 54 Tooth rounding out that top 10.
And in the Bs, we have Evo Barbarians quite well ahead with 60 points ahead of Vision, and AHDR, who are tied second and third on 54 points. Dirty Sprockets in fourth, Cryogen Etnas in fifth, TV Gungners in sixth, WNZ Bumbles in seventh, Tune Bikeworks in eighth, ZHQ Ravens in ninth, and the Z Sundries in 10th.
So we'll take a look at the Div 2 overall league standings now. We've got the A's here, Team ZWC Allies. They've got a bit of a front run here ahead of the Peter Z Vividors on 54 points. Oral 7 and AHDR All for Cake. They are tied on 53 points for third and fourth. Next up, in fifth on 19 points. The other teams are yet to show up for racing, but come on, lads, get involved. Because this is certainly a cracking league so far. Anna, the Bees?
WMZ Bees in first, the TBR 52th in second, Evo Mad Max 2021 in third, quite close behind the Betas in fourth, then TT1 Bruisers in fifth, Dirty Sprockets Trois in sixth, AHDR Ballers in seventh, and the AHDR Bears in eighth, Peter Z Vividors Humanos in ninth, and Wang Farang CC in 10th.
The Bees, the Bruisers, the Ballers. My goodness me, there's a whole lot of alliteration going on there. But Anna, at the top of every division, we're seeing a couple of teams emerge. We're not seeing really one team emerge. We're seeing a number that are really going back and forth. I reckon we're setting ourselves up for a pretty good back end of this season.
Oh, I think we've got some great battles ahead, especially next week. You've got the Yorkshire course. Oh, quite a punchy course, hard. It's going to be hard for strategy too, what people decide. And then we're back into a team time trial, but one with a bit of a difference, going up some big climbs. So there are some good courses coming up ahead. There's some good battles. I think we've got a lot of excitement coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we certainly do. And what I want to know, Anna, is what did you learn from today's racing that you'll take onto your whiteboard and into your race tomorrow?
Well, as you say that, I'm sitting here with my laptop open looking at the fastest wheel sets that you can have for climbing, because I'm intrigued by Sam Lindsay's choice of wheel set, and also Patterson in the women's race also having some climbing wheels. So obviously, if you can climb well and just stay with your group on the flats, you don't really need that aero setup at all. Just use the real lightweight stuff. That's my little top trick I learned tonight.
Well, look, it says to me that you've got a bit of confidence, because I can tell you if it was me racing, there would be no wheel set in the real or the Zwift world that would help me. But I say good luck to you, Anna. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back the same time next week. Of course, that is around Yorkshire. We love you jumping in on the socials and keeping us honest, and keeping Anna honest with her fashion watch. And you can tune in and watch her race tomorrow, see how she goes. Anna, thank you very much for joining us, and good luck tomorrow. We'll see you next week.